started, you had some problems with your vision, didn't you?
I had double vision. That's what kicked it all off many years, 30 odd years ago.
But you know why you get that, don't you?
Well,
can I show you some X-rays?
Yeah, sure.
As the pituitary tumour grows, it starts to press on the optic nerve.
That is a pituitary which is normal in size, and that pituitary is not touching the eye nerve, as you can see.
Yeah.
Whereas this particular patient has a large pituitary tumour, which you can see here, and if it goes into the side, you can actually get double vision, but if it goes upwards like that, you lose fields of vision, so you can't see out of the sides of your eye.
All right.
Okay. I want to ask you about your BMWs. Goliath had the psychological advantage because of his tall stature, but David actually had the advantage because Goliath, unbeknown to David, had visual field problems probably, which will have not only impaired his vision but likely to have impaired his mobility as well.
David didn't just have mobility on his side against Goliath. The Bible says he was the king's armour-bearer.
Being an armour-bearer to someone of importance, the king or the king's son, was a very, very privileged position. And it meant that that person had some considerable military capability. Not yet a fully fledged warrior, but an apprentice warrior.
No one denies that David faced Goliath with only a sling as a weapon. On the face of it, hardly a match for the giant's sword and spear. But sling stones found on battlefield sites across the Middle East show that slings could be extremely dangerous.
We know from the biblical record that David just picked up a natural pebble from the valley floor in the area where he confronted Goliath. But from our own excavations, we've discovered many, many stones that were of flint that were made into spheroids and used exclusively to be weapons of slings. This is a flint, and you can see it's been chipped on all sides to produce the little spherical shape, and it has quite a weight. And thrown from a sling, it could have a lot of velocity and a lot of impact.
In fact, slings were one of the most lethal weapons in antiquity. Alan Birkbeck is an expert in ballistics at Glasgow University. He has acted as an expert witness in court on injuries inflicted by weapons. He and his colleague, Ron Thompson, have designed an experiment to test the speed and power of the sling. Using a high-speed camera, they can measure just how fast the sling stone travels.
Well, we set it up using the small optical CCTV camera, which is connected to the digital motion recorder system. It allows us to record at high speed the images between the 2-metre upright posts and calculate the damage would be caused by the object arriving at the target.
Alan has to sling the stone between the 2 upright posts for the camera to capture its flight.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8.
The final calculations show just how deadly the sling can be. Ron found that the stone reached about 30 metres per second. That's nearly 80 miles an hour.
Well, the results are quite surprising. Given its fairly heavy mass, it would have a kinetic energy, say an impact energy, that's on a par with a medieval longbow arrow or even a modern pt2 bullet. Now, these are certainly killing devices. They would go through soft tissue, they would certainly crack bone, they would possibly penetrate bone, and if they hit the right spot, they would certainly be lethal.
As David and Goliath met in battle, it was the shepherd boy, not the giant, who had the upper hand. With one blow, David is victorious. Then a final act reveals him to be very knowledgeable of the battle traditions of his day.
David took the head of Goliath and Goliath's weapons as trophies of the defeat of the enemy. A trophy is taken for display to terrify the enemy, to demonstrate the power of us who killed the other guy.
There's more to David's battle with Goliath than meets the eye. And that's true of almost everything about this man. The latest research shows that he may have been more ruthless and ambitious than the Bible portrait allows.
We look at David typically through the lens of a canonization that's taken place over millennia. And so David becomes a sort of a plaster saint. But the historical David is a character who was willing to take chances. He didn't get to power without running through a lot of other people on the way.
To find out what kind of person he really was, scholars are now looking at the stories in a revolutionary way. They've found that modern politics can shed light on biblical events. The reputations of today's politicians are managed by spin doctors who manipulate information to persuade us to accept their version of the truth. Historian Steve Mackenzie believes the same may be true of the biblical writers.
The biblical writers are often compared to spin doctors. Spin doctors paint a picture, a portrait of a politician's words and ideas and motives and so on, and also control, to some degree, release of information. That would have been true even more so in the ancient world, which didn't have newspapers and so on.
In order to get to the David behind the spin, historians believe it's essential not to take the Bible's account at face value.
Why dig beneath the surface of the biblical account? Because the account that we read is an interpretation, a spin on a series of events that occurred in the 10th century BC. I'm a historian, and a historian's job is to undo the spin.
Using this method, historians are now taking a closer look at the biblical claims about David. One of the most famous is that he was a master musician. His instrument was the lyre, a small harp. Bo Lauergren is an expert in recreating musical instruments of the ancient world. Although no actual lyres from the time of David survive in Israel, contemporary illustrations from Egypt have given Bo enough detail to recreate the kind of lyre he believes David would have played.
David's lyre probably looked like this model I have here. It is made of wood, entirely wooden arms, curved arms, wooden body, a hole in the bottom, it would be the sound hole, a wooden bridge, and tuning collars made of some kind of rope. It's difficult to know exactly what David's lyre would have sounded like. It depends on many things. For example, the composition of the string. Is it gut? Is it linen, or what is it? The thickness of the string and the tension in the tuning collar up here. So the sound that you hear here is probably very similar to David's lyre, but we can never be sure it's exactly the same.
David's lyre playing has shaped his legendary image as the music-loving hero. But some historians are reading between the lines of the biblical accounts.